Charter schools, as a reminder, are public schools that receive taxpayer dollars. At their best, they offer potential for innovation, flexibility, and responsiveness to community needs. But at their worst, and too often in practice, they operate without adequate oversight, without sufficient safeguards for civil rights, and without the transparency required of traditional public schools. That matters because the consequences fall heavily on Black and brown students. This Saturday marks 71 years since the landmark Supreme Court Brown versus Board of Education decision, yet our nation still struggles to provide equitable access and opportunity for all students. Without meaningful guardrails, charter schools can become a driver of segregation, and we've seen this before. After Brown, resistance to integration took many forms: private segregation academies, neighborhood school policies, and later school choice plans. Today, we must ask whether we are repeating that history under a different name. The data is sobering. Charter schools on average are more racially isolated than traditional public schools in nearly every state and major metropolitan area. Research shows that the expansion of charter schools has measurably increased school segregation. It's reduced the likelihood that Black and Hispanic students attend school with peers of other races, and that racial isolation is often paired with economic isolation, compounding inequality. This is not a theoretical concern. Segregated schools are under-resourced schools. They're more likely to employ less experienced teachers, offer fewer advanced courses, and struggle to provide essential student supports. This harms not only students of color, but the entire promise of public education. Research shows that many charter schools face additional challenges. For example, teachers tend to be less experienced and have higher turnover rates than those in traditional public schools. Charter schools close at a higher rate than traditional public schools, and they have found in some cases to have higher risks of waste, fraud, and abuse than traditional public schools. I served in the Oregon legislature, and I was on a committee formed to examine Oregon's charter school policies and practices 10 years after our enabling statute passed. And we had many questions then that remain unresolved today, including how are charter schools determining which students to enroll, who serves on their boards, to whom are they accountable, what happens to students when charter schools close, and how can we prevent charter schools with poor outcomes, especially online charter schools, from proliferating. A November 2024 report by the National Center for Charter School Accountability and the Network for Public Education called Doomed to Fail, an Analysis of Charter School Closures from 1998 to 2022 found that more than 25% of charter schools closed within 5 years of opening. This increases to 49% within 15 years of opening. Several audits by the Office of Inspector General in the U.S. Department of Education identified problems with charter schools and charter management organizations, including conflicts of interest, lack of accountability of federal funds, waste, fraud, and abuse, and failure to provide students the services that are required by federal programs, and also unresolved compliance issues, among others. This hearing is not about attacking charter schools as a concept. It's about our responsibility to every student, our responsibility to guarantee that the growth of charter schools does not come at the expense of equity, inclusion, and civil rights, and the rest of the more than 90% of the students who attend traditional public schools. It's our responsibility to examine whether current policies help us move forward or if they reinforce the barriers we've spent generations trying to dismantle. Congress has tools to advance these goals. We have the Strength and Diversity Act and the Equity and Inclusion Enforcement Act that offer targeted supports to school districts that are working to develop, implement, and expand desegregation initiatives. And the bill I co-lead with Representative DeLauro, the Championing Honest and Responsible Transparency in Education Reform, or Charter Act, would prevent for-profit entities from managing charter schools and siphoning taxpayer dollars from children for their financial gain rather than for the benefit of the students they enroll. Together, these bills would help close achievement gaps, support integration and accountability, and fulfill the vision laid out in Brown. But we also must look beyond charter schools as part of the conversation. We should be asking what we can do to improve our nation's public education system for all students in all public schools to help them succeed to the best of their abilities. In 2015, we passed the bipartisan Every Student Succeeds Act. That law intended for funding to be directed to those most in need to address achievement gaps. ESSA provides flexibility to states and districts to determine how to make improvements, and it focuses on a well-rounded education that includes the arts and better quality assessment. But ESSA has never been implemented with fidelity since it was signed into law. That, I submit, would be a worthy task for this committee. It's also important to address the other issues that affects students' ability to learn, including hunger, mental health, and access to facilities that are free from lead and asbestos. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the irony of my Republican colleagues continuing their hearings about closing gaps and opening doors in education, while the President is actively dismantling the Department of Education and terminating grants for public education initiatives. President Trump's budget proposal invests additional funds in charter schools, but slashes $4.5 billion from other K-12 education programs, where, again, as a reminder, more than 90% of the students are enrolled. Republicans on this committee just voted to cut $330 billion from higher education, ending the student loan programs that truly open doors of opportunity for underserved communities. So I hope today we see a real commitment to making public education accessible, accountable, and exceptional for every student. Schools that receive public dollars must be part of a public education system that is accountable, transparent, and committed to equity. We cannot afford to ignore the evidence. If we're serious about giving every child, regardless of race or zip code, the opportunity to thrive, we must design our school system to deliver on that promise. I also look forward to the conversation, and I yield back the balance of my time.